Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Morrison. I am a Director of Customer Success with UiPath. The reason I tell you that is more because it kind of gives me perspective on seeing customers in the field in my time with UiPath over the last 4 years. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in IT automation specifically, and how that kind of end-to-end journey looks like. I want to start with kind of a level set. The role of the CIO and the IT teams are changing. In the 90s, we're really focused on how do we build these really large on-prem solutions, doing these massive deployments. We moved through the dot-com bubble. We moved on to then being kind of order takers. There was a lot going on in terms of how do we provide enough storage, how we're preparing data centers, how do we have enough capacity. We started to bleed into how do we move to cloud, how do we take advantage of cloud strategies. We're moving though into how does the CIO and the IT team become a power play for our businesses? How do we create new business models? How do we become revenue generating? What does that look like? And when we talk about that, the number one word that we use is digital transformation. And I hate to use that word because I feel like it gets beaten over everybody's head, but it's true. We are trying to work on how do we improve and evolve our businesses to achieve key outcomes, no longer just for IT, no longer just to be support in the back end, but to actually be a strong part of the boardroom conversation. We're now focused on growth of revenue. We're now focused on security and compliance, but we're also looking at how are we taking advantage of different means of insourcing instead of just outsourcing? How are we changing the strategy and creating revenue instead of just being a cost center? And you'll know that the CIO priorities are shifting. And I think the study currently shows that by the end of 2023, the expectation is that 60% of CIOs are going to be considered a key executive in boardroom conversations for planning and execution. Usually they were order takers. They were kind of the handyman. They're moving from the handyman to the architect. We're now designing and enabling. We're really focused on cost reduction and regulations. Businesses are scaling really, really quickly. And as they scale very quickly, we lose the ability to kind of police things at scale the way they should be policed. So there's an opportunity to add automation to enhance that. We're looking for new revenue sources. We're looking to scale faster. The number of organizations that I've seen working on scale, and we can talk about repeatable processes that can be enabled by technology, means that instead of scaling revenue 4x and scaling headcount 4x, we can scale revenue 4x, and we can scale headcount 2x, and then enable technology like the rest. That lets us have a much lower cost of scaling, and it means that we can scale more easily. It sets us up for elasticity as we grow. Lastly, the focus on customer experience has been a major focus of most enterprises as of late. I was just on the phone yesterday with a customer talking about how their key as a manufacturer is actually to improve their customer experience. It was that, and then their supply chain. And supply chain made a lot of sense to me, right? Large manufacturer, of course, they're worried about how they're getting their goods from one place A to place B, how they're servicing their customers. But they said we really are focused on making sure we stay ahead of the curve on how our customers see us as a partner and how we enable them to do more. And so with some of those priorities, we start to talk about how they bubble down into more articulate action items that are actually being put in place. We talk about how can we enable infrastructure and the automation of infrastructure in terms of scale up, scale down. We talked about security compliance, how we're making sure that we make sure that all of our endpoints are secure. How do we make sure that we are aware of breaches? How are we able to action when we have an issue? We also look in terms of how we integrating systems. We know there's a lot of technical debt out there. We know there's a lot of legacy systems. There's a lot of homegrown systems that can be really difficult to work with, and they can be really difficult to integrate together. There are opportunities now using different layers of automation to integrate those systems and kind of offset some of your technical debt, or use that as a strategy while you rebuild from some of your technical debt and move yourself into a better position as a technology organization. Then lastly, as we talk about our customer experience, self-service is the name of the game right now. And we're going to talk about in another slide or so why, but how we enable self-services, how that unlocks value for our organization and also creates a better experience for our customers is really the next level of how we see our customers as partners as we go to market. So that's it. First, I want to call out some demand shift. And this in the context of self-service is really key. We are seeing more and more that we need to move things to the left of this chart. We need to enable that self-service. And in doing so, we actually allow ourselves to avoid inquiries and tickets coming into our back office, which is where we fail to scale. We see long wait times. We see a need to linearly scale our resources. We see a really large IT spend and massive ticketing systems. I can't tell you the number of times that I've been really thrilled to log an IT ticket in my organization and just sit and wait for it to get filled out. The answer is zero. I don't think I've ever been really excited to go log a ticket. Then as we move from that self-service and kind of enabling and expanding the scale of some of those self-service capabilities, we then get into, for the ones that do get past our self-service, those tickets get generated, then what? How do we actually automate their execution? How do we maybe use a digital assistant or a robot to now triage the ticket, and can it go solve? Can we do an automated password reset so that somebody that we pay $100,000 a year doesn't have to do that work? Right? Are there better things that they can be spending their time on? Next, we move into demand reduction. So this is how we're actually talking about how we save on some of our infrastructure costs. How are we actually lowering that operational spend? Some things that we've thought about here are, how do we spin up and spin down VMs and VDIs? It's a great opportunity. Think about how many VDIs run in the average enterprise. We had a great program with Rick Bankhauser, and they actually, every one of their people in a particular part of the business used on average 3 VDIs per day. And we were able to actually spin those down every night and then spin them up when a person logged in the morning. We saved them 20% on their overall infrastructure bill for VDIs running in the cloud. And then lastly, how do we talk about demand elimination? So how do we actually take work out of the business? There is a lot of work that right now gets generated. We get a lot of alerts on infrastructure. We get notified of a lot of things, but it's really difficult to go action them. How do we set up a digital workforce to action those tickets, to not just see an alert and tell someone about it, but actually go resolve it? You know, get a notification for low memory on a machine, and don't just notify us, but actually go expand the memory on that machine, and then let somebody go back and kind of audit whether or not that was the right decision to be made. But in the short term, we've alleviated a risk. So there's a tremendous opportunity to go and do some of that automated intervention and eliminate the actual work from the workforce altogether. Shifting the conversation towards digital transformation, there's a lot of opportunity to introduce automation and a platform like UiPath in this conversation. As we talk about preparation for digital transformation, opportunities usually include, and the most painful thing is actually understanding our current day state. There is a lot of work that can be done around process mining, task mining, to actually understand our business, give ourselves the opportunity to find the right place to invest our resources and reimagine how that process is going to work in the future state before we actually execute. There is a lot of trend right now where people are trying to automate before doing the full analysis. And so you end up automating and then reimagining and automating and creating a new system and automating, instead of going through the entire thing, getting a full end-to-end picture, and then going through once and coming up with an ideal outcome. Then you move into the development phase. Now we're actually implementing our change. There is a tremendous opportunity here to build applications using a menagerie of different technologies. Obviously, UiPath, we love to talk about RPA. We love to talk about all of the connectors we have. We love to talk about those building blocks. The reality, though, is you're going to probably use a mix of technologies. There are some things that code is really good at. And there are some things that we should integrate across technologies. And there are some things that are appropriate for a citizen developer to do low code, no code. But as we talk about this, there is a great opportunity to start embedding AI and enabled skills into development and talk about how we actually accelerate the implementation pipeline or timeline as we go through our digital transformation journey. Then we move into actually data migration. So we've now stood up our application, but now we need to move all this data. Automation is the best tool for ETL. The number of times we've talked to customers about how do you move the data, what's going to happen, how does it get transformed from one database schema to the next. There's a lot of really technical work there, but the reality is Data needs to move from A to B, and it doesn't have to be a particularly complex process. We just need to know what transformations need to happen, and we can enable that with technology and move it really quickly. We can also use automation and robots to not only move the data, but also validate the data. If we have some baseline of what good looks like, we can actually run robots over data periodically on a repeating basis, not a one time, and get a constant understanding of whether or not we are in good standing from a data perspective. Next, we have testing. Testing, I think, is one of the least tapped parts of the market right now. I think there's tremendous opportunity in testing. Automated testing, I think, has been done the same way for a long time. And in some places, it works really well. There's some really good programs out there that use scripts really strongly. But we're lacking and missing is the human element to testing and automated testing. The amount of money that is used and wasted on these large scale enterprise automation, enterprise rollouts for ERPs and Salesforce and all these other systems. And still there's a team of 50 people that are doing manual testing to do acceptance testing. You'd think there's a problem there. We probably just spent $10 million to roll out a new ERP, and here we have a small army of people that are manually clicking buttons to make sure it works. Why don't we have robots do that for us? Why not automate that? So that if the test fails the first time, which it likely will, we can run it 50 more times for the same cost. All we need to do is hit go. There's a tremendous value opportunity to be seen there. And then lastly, we move into production. So we are now running these digitally transformed systems. How do we make sure that they are constantly up, that we're monitoring them, that we're doing sanity checks, that we are validating that automations we have put in production along with these systems are continuing to run well, so that they can continue to enable our business at the lowest cost possible. These are all things we think about in production, and are all things that we're able to roll out with UiPath using robots in a combination of APIs and extension and UI automation. So there's just a tremendous amount of capability there. I will leave you with this, and I know this was kind of a short conversation, but the opportunity for automation in the IT landscape is tremendous. Frankly, I think most of our IT teams do not consider themselves a customer of their own technology, and that needs to change. The opportunity here is for IT to consume its own offerings that they generally bring to the business and support, and instead use it to modernize their own practice. So that said, and I will leave you with that, but my name is Jason. If you guys have any questions, I would love to have a conversation.